Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. This week's video is a pretty jam-packed vlog of everything that I got up to during the week. This was actually filmed a few weeks ago, but I recorded each day everything that I did with the garden and the flower farm, as well as a few clips from my other job that I do, which is working as bush regenerator with Whitbird Environmental. It was a pretty extreme week and I was definitely pretty exhausted. It's just a lot of physical work to do bush regeneration and also farming, flower farming. It's just a lot of hard work and takes a lot of time, but it's such a rewarding job to do. I love working outside, I love being in nature, and I love growing things. I love growing food and flowers. So if you are new here, we do run a small scale flower farm here where we sell seasonal flowers both at market, and I do special orders and deliveries as well. So that takes up a lot of time, but I also do work as a bush regenerator a few days a week with Whitbird Environmental. So for that we're doing weeding on a much larger basis and kind of looking at invasive weeds such as lantana and privet, which can really take over different landscapes around the place. We also do manage people's gardens and veggie gardens. It's a whole array of different jobs and every day is completely different, which I really love about the job. So I did want to include just a few days of what I get up to working as a bush regenerator, and then show you how the flower farm is going and what I am planting and getting up to here in my spare time that I don't really have a lot of, but somehow I make it work. So like all my videos, make sure to grab a cup of tea or coffee and definitely a snack. And I really hope you enjoy seeing what my week looked like. Definitely make sure to give Whitbird Environmental a follow. I'll put Jeff's details in the description box. Also give my flower farming page a follow, The Patch in Bloom, over on Instagram, where I share kind of the bouquets that I have for the week and what we're bringing to the markets. And then I also have another Instagram page called The Nature Patch, which is kind of all of this stuff and just generally what I'm getting up to in my day-to-day life. I know I say it in all of my videos, but make sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you do like this kind of content. It's completely free to you and it really does help my channel out, and is a great way to support creators, which is completely free to you, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to do a voiceover for this video, so I really hope you enjoy seeing what I got up to this week. So we started out the week working at a property where the Whitbird Environmental Nursery is based at. So this is the greenhouse here where we germinate all of these seeds. There's a lot of different native species in here, as well as some herbs and garden plants that Jeff sells at the markets and uses on some jobs around that he works at, as well as selling to local nurseries. So this is the initial stage where the plants come in to germinate in kind of like a glass house, greenhouse situation where there's really high humidity and it stays a lot more warm. You can see here we use a lot of vermiculite on top of where the seeds are placed. That's just to reduce a lot of the algae and dampening off issues and that kind of thing. But once they have germinated and they're potted up, the seedlings come out into the shade house here. This is just a little bit more cooler in temperature, I suppose, and allows the plants to harden off a little bit more before they go completely outside. So you can see all of these tube stock here. These are all hardening off and growing a little bit more before they go outside. There's some really cool species in here that I'm really excited to watch grow, and I'm so excited to see them go back out into nature and also be planted in people's backyards. So I was just doing a little bit of a walk around the nursery, just checking on some plants because I got here a little bit earlier before we were going up to the site where we were working today. So it was really nice to come and check up on all of the little plant babies. This is definitely my favorite job, working with Whitbird Environmental, is working in the nursery. I love working with plants and seeing them grow. And I just love the whole process from planting a seed to then being able to see people buy it and be able to plant it back out in nature. So this here is the outside area where all of the plants stay until they are moved on to their future homes, and this just allows them to harden off in this area. They're all watered on a timing system, and yeah, it's just a really cool process to watch them grow, and I can't wait to see all of these shelves filled up with plants ready to go to future homes. Alright, then we hopped in the buggy and went up the hill to the site we were working on. This is probably one of my favourite sites to work on. It's absolutely stunning, the views that you get, and it's pretty well sheltered, so you're not kind of out in the harsh sun. We're kind of working under this canopy here, doing a lot of fine weeding today. Previously, a lot of this was cleared from all of the lantana that was growing there. This is me not following the path and actually forgetting where to go. Back this way, there we go. But yeah, today we were focusing on really small weeds, because you can see this area it looks pretty good. A lot of the larger weeds like the lantana have been cleared. We were just focusing on fine weeding, which is definitely something that we do prioritize, and a lot of the days are actually like this, where we're pulling small little weeds to make way for ground covers such as this native violet here and other native species to grow. So you'll see me here, I am just walking around pulling out little seedlings, and a lot of people seem confused as to why we do this, but doing a thorough job when you're doing bush regeneration to encourage native seedlings to come back and working at slower paces really does pay off. You get to see so much more of the native species coming back, you can be careful, and you just overall get much better results. So this here is one of the weeds that I was looking at pulling out. This is a moth vine here, which is a pretty invasive species around this area. It can take over entire trees and produces so much seed. So if you have these in your garden and you're in an area where they're invasive, definitely look at removing them. They have a really annoying white sap on them as well, so I do like to be careful, and we always wear gloves and protective gear. This is a little lantana seedling that I'm pulling out. Pulling them out at this size is what we want to do. We don't want them to get into we don't want them to mature, because that's when they can take over an entire landscape. A lot of these lighter colored sticks here are from massive lantana plants. And all of that kind of mountain of sticks there is what lantana can turn into. That was previously cleared and killed off, so it's slowly dying. But as we were working through, we just put some sticks and stakes around some of the native plants that were coming back. So this is where going slow really pays off. You can see here, this is a white cedar coming back. Such beautiful trees, and you would not get this result if you were to poison the whole area or bulldoze the whole area. Working really slowly like this, you can start to see all of the native seeds and have that native seed bank actually do what it's supposed to do and come back to naturally revegetate the area. So this was a really nice day. It was super windy, super cold though, but I always love the drive up and the drive back to the site. And obviously seeing all the little goats and all the animals that are on this farm is really nice to see. Alright, the next day I had a day off from work, so I was back in the garden, and I am firstly giving some of my seedlings a fertilise. So I like to use sea salt for fertilizing my seedlings because it's not very harsh. I use and am going to switch to Charlie Carp for a lot of other fertilizing in the garden. But for the seedlings, because they're so delicate and small, sea salt is a lot less harsh than other fertilizers, so I'm just diluting a little bit in water and giving these a little bit of a feed because I could just see some of them were starting to go yellow. A lot of these plants are stock snapdragons, some other natives that I was propagating for the flower farm, so I gave them all a good fertilize before I head on to the other jobs in the garden. One of those jobs is each week or every few weeks I'm starting to dry the calendula again. I use calendula for so many things. I make a calendula balm, which I'll link the recipe to that in the description box, which I use as a lip balm. I also dry the calendula to add into my bath salts that I make. So I make some botanical bath salts that we sell at the markets, and one of the recipes has some calendula in it. It's one of my favorite things to grow in the garden, but it really does kind of take over if you don't manage it. Luckily, it's pretty easy to pull out, but if you don't deadhead or take the seedling or take the seed heads off, you will have a lot of calendula, which may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing, just depends on how much you want in your garden. So you can see here, this is a lot of the calendula that had self-seeded itself. It's great, but I just definitely don't need this much. So I'm clearing out this area to plant some flowers, some other flowers in this area. I'm going to be planting some dwarf stock, which I'm not necessarily using for the flower farm. I just want to see how tall they actually do grow. And I do make a lot of jar posies, so I was after some more shorter flowers with good quality stems, and so that's why I'm trying dwarf stock for this. So I am just digging a few holes and I'm planting them fairly close together. That's just because I want to maximize the small space that I have, and with dwarf stock they are a branching variety, so you can trim them back once they first flower and they should keep reshooting. So I'm sure this area is going to look really nice, yeah, I'm excited to get some more cooler season crops in to switch over from all of the weeds that are growing around here. So I will let you enjoy the calming sounds of me planting before we get on to the next job. I also wanted to plant a few more jonquils in this area. I really would like them alongside all of the pathways throughout this garden, so I'm just planting a few more around here. It's getting a little late to be planting these, but honestly they're better in the ground than in the bags. So I'm slowly getting through this bag of, I think it was like 50 bulbs, but slowly planting them around the garden. They do come back better the year after, so after they've been in the ground for a year. So I'm not expecting too much growth this year, but next year they should look amazing. Alright, the next job was a little bit of worm farm maintenance. I've since picked up a few more worm farms. I actually do have one more other than these 4. So I have 5 worm farms now, which is exciting. But one of them, the one on the right, doesn't have a lot of worms in it as I'm just starting it out because it's fairly new. So the worm farm, these 2 worm farms just have food scraps. They don't have any pet waste or anything in them. But I'm just scooping out some worms from the one that is a lot older, that has a ton of worms in it. They have been very happy in this system, and every like week or 2 I will just slowly integrate a few more worms into the new bin. They also just needed a little bit more bedding, and because it's quite cold at night, I like to definitely keep a lot of sugarcane on top. And because it's quite cold at night, I like to keep a little bit of sugarcane mulch on top of the system. So I'm just topping them with some sugarcane mulch. This acts as bedding. It also just helps to balance the system a little bit, as I had quite a lot of food scraps in there. The carbon definitely balances out the nitrogen, so I like to do this every now and again, and the worms really like it. Alright, back to some more bush regeneration. Again, this day was another day of fine weeding, which I was perfectly fine with because this property was absolutely stunning. It had been revegetated previously. You can see all of these tree stakes around and amongst these little lantana seedlings that I was pulling, but some people had come through before and cleared the area of lantana and planted a lot of native species. This property is really well managed at the moment, and it was really nice to see kind of a site that was a little bit further on in revegetation, because a lot of the native seedlings were quite large and a little bit more established. So we could cover a lot larger of an area just pulling out these small little seedlings. So yeah, this was kind of a nice job, and not a typical day, I suppose. Like a lot of the other days are really hardcore lantana clearing or just a lot more physical work, and this week I kind of found it was a little bit less physical, which was really nice because I wasn't feeling 100%. So this was really nice to just be out in nature and get the fresh air, be around all of the birds and the creatures that were keeping me company while I was working. I was working with 2 other people at the time, and we had some really great conversations, and I think everyone was just having a good day here because it was just such a beautiful property. That's not going to work. One thing I definitely need to invest in is a tripod though, to take you along with these days and actually get some better shots, because this was quite challenging. next day we were working on another stunning property. I've just been so lucky to get work on these amazing properties lately. This was another maintenance day where we were maintaining all these different areas of the plants that we had previously planted. So we're slowly revegetating this kind of cliffside here and along the riverbeds and riparian areas. So it was a lot of walking around and weeding. I didn't get too much filmed on this day just because we were actually so busy just covering all of the 3 main areas that we had worked on, but I just did want to get a few shots of the beautiful creek. This is actually some roots here of one of the casuarina trees coming out into the river. They look so beautiful. They kind of look a little bit like coral coming out into the creek. They look really pretty. Coming to these sites is always really great for me to learn more about local species. I learn so much from the people that I work with and learn more about how to identify different weeds and have some fairy friends accompanying us sometimes, which is always lovely. But yeah, it's really nice to just soak in knowledge from the other people that I work with so that I can actually identify weeds and kind of what they look like versus native plants. I've definitely learned a lot in the time that I've worked with Bird Environmental. Friday, I am back in my garden, back in my little patch, and I am just doing a little bit more work on the worm farms. I'm going to be harvesting some worm castings from this bin here. So I'm just taking off the top layer, and I've done so many videos on this, but basically how I do it is I scrape off some of the worms that are in the middle layer. This is the layer that I'm going to be harvesting, as well as taking out the castings from the very bottom layer. I don't personally mind if there are a few worms in the castings because all of these are just going back on the flower farm, back to grow flowers, and I don't mind if the worms go back into the soil. But I'm just loosening up the castings here because you can see they're quite dense, and I'm just going to let this sit for the entire day. What this means is the worms are going to slowly move down to the next layer once I move around the different trays, and I'll leave the top off so that they can move down. But before I do that, I'm just going to take out some of these castings here that I will dry because I know these don't have worms in them. I'll just dry these and probably add these to a seed raising mix or a potting mix that I make up. And let me know if you'd like to see the recipe that I use for making potting mix and seed raising mix. I'd be happy to do a video on that. But yeah, the top layer I will then add to the middle layer, and then that middle layer is going to go on the very top, if that makes sense. And then I'll leave the top off, the lid off throughout the day. And these worms that you can see here, they will then move down into the middle layer so that I can then harvest the top layer of worm castings. So that's a little rundown on how to harvest a whole tray of worm castings. I'll link some other videos down below in the description box for you. And then I just have a few castings out here to dry in the sun so I can use them for my potting mix. Alright, then it was time to get the rest of these ranunculus planted in the ground. I did end up actually purchasing a few more corms, so I wanted to go hard on the ranunculus this year because they are so beautiful and they grow really well here. So this is the flower farm area where I'm going to be planting the ranunculus in these few rows. This was a few days of quite a lot of work actually. I really would like to invest in some kind of like auger for the drill so that I can drill holes a lot quicker. I was just doing all of this by hand, firstly just weeding the bed and then planting all of the ranunculus just by hand. It took a while, but I had a lot of You Can't Eat the Grass lives that I was listening to as podcasts, so they definitely kept me company. I've really been enjoying their content lately and has really been kind of motivating me to plant out all of these rows. And yeah, I definitely like to listen to a good podcast when I'm working. Speaking of podcasts, if you haven't already, definitely make sure to check out our podcast, the Earthly Roots podcast, where myself and Diane from Diane and Samson, we film episodes on gardening and homesteading and basically just what we're up to. And it's a really nice conversation just to chat about all the things that we love. So definitely make sure to check out that podcast if you haven't already. But yeah, I'm slowly getting through planting all of these corms. I'm planting these quite close together just because I don't have a large space, and I also want them nice and tightly packed so that they can support each other as they grow. And we get a lot of wind in this area, so I like to pack my flowers a little bit closer together. And I do fertilize this bed just with like some pelletized chicken manure, as well as just giving it a nice mulch with sugarcane mulch, and this seems to work really well, and the flowers grow really nicely with this mix. We have very clay loam soil, so thankfully I don't need to water this area a lot, but yeah, I am giving it a good water in after I've planted everything. After that, I am just making some makeshift hoops, because one thing we need to do is protect all of the seedlings that we plant from the bandicoot. We have a bandicoot around that likes to dig up everything that I plant, and yeah, they're the cutest things ever, but they can be really destructive for a farm or any type of garden really. So I'm just making some makeshift hoops out of this irrigation pipe, poly pipe. I don't even really know what it was. Just picked it up from Bunnings, and you can find, my dad found another roll of this at the tip as well. So you can get these for really cheap. I'm sure like so many people have scraps of these hanging around. This is what they look like when I pop them in. I just use some sticks around as a base and then just loop them around so that they form a nice little hoop, and then use netting over it, which you can see here. As soon as I did that, when we took the cats out, Annie was very interested in it. Have you gone through the hole? What did you do? Do you want to get out the same way you got in? Come on. Goodness.
Get it. She's a little girl. You're so naughty.
This netting is quite old and has a few holes in it, but it's okay, it does the job. This was a few days later. I ended up broad forking and prepping a whole other bed, which I just didn't film. I just had to get this all done. And I planted the 3 beds here, or the 3 half beds, with ranunculus and a little leftover stock that I had. So they're all nicely planted in there now, and I'm hoping they grow really well. So yeah, this was a very busy week, but a very productive week, and I'm glad I got all of this planted and all of the jobs done. Let me know what you thought of this video. If you like this kind of content, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for lots more week in the life videos. I can film a lot more. They're vlogs that are easier for me to film, so if this is something that you enjoy, please do let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are in the world, and until my next video, happy gardening everyone. Bye.